Welcome back. Today in PLS 510 we're going to talk about the Lespedezas and birchfoot trefoil. We're going to start with annual Lespedezas, and the scientific name for these are going to be Coumaroia stipulaceae, that's Korean Lespedeza, and Coumaroia striata, which is Kobe or striate Lespedeza, and their photographs are on the left and the right respectively. They are fairly easy to tell apart. Kobe, or the Korean Lespedeza, the stipulaceae, has more of a little bit of a heart-shaped leaf. The veins are a little more visible, but it's this heart-shaped leaf that really gives it away. When you look at the Kobe or striate type of Lespedeza, these are leaves that are shaped like they're elliptical in shape, and I say football because I'm a football fan, but they look like a football, and they typically are leafier in appearance than the Korean Lespedeza. So the annual Lespedezas are true annuals, and they can be managed for reseeding though, and therefore they will come back year after year. This does take a little bit of management in the fall because they flower in late summer, and then we can't graze them very, very closely, or otherwise we'll graze off all the developing seed. They are fine-stemmed, they are non-bloating, they grow well in the summertime. Unlike white clover, maybe even red clover, these really do thrive in the hotter conditions of summer, and they tolerate lower soil fertility than alfalfa or clovers. But you would say that Korean and Kobe, or the Kobe is also the striate type, they differ in leafiness. This is a comparison photograph of Korean on the left and Kobe on the right, and it's fairly apparent that the leaves of Korean are only on the ends of the branches. The leaves have fallen off of the branches all the way down to the root. So if you compare that then to where the leaves are present on the Kobe Lespedeza, you can see that leaves are present all the way down the stem, almost completely to the root. This is another view of Kobe or striate Lespedeza, and you can see that the leaves tend to be more present all the way down the stalk. Early harvest is going to help total yield in fescue annual Lespedeza stands, and by that I mean cutting that first cutting of grass as early as you can. This is work that I did in South Missouri in the 80s, where fescue annual Lespedeza was overseeded actually into tall fescue. Then we had the plots where we had some cut at boot to early head, some cut at flowering, and then some cut when the seed was mature. And then measured the dry matter, the digestible dry matter per acre, and the crude protein pounds per acre. What you can see is that cutting that first cutting early wound up with more total annual yield, more yield of digestible dry matter, that's that middle column, and more yield of crude protein in pounds per acre. And it came from, first of all, with higher digestibility in the fescue in that first cutting, but from the higher protein and higher digestible dry matter in the annual Lespedeza when we had that first cutting on time. So there's more annual Lespedeza when we release it by cutting the fescue early. We'll switch gears now and talk a little bit about Sericea Lespedeza, or Lespedeza cuneata. This is a very different looking legume, and I'll bring a specimen to class, or if you're viewing this away from class, maybe you've seen it growing on hillsides or in the wild areas of some pastures. So it's very vertical. It has very elongated leaves, and again 3 leaflets per leaf. They're on a petiole that's attached very closely, short petiole right off the main stem, for the most part. It's very vertical, and it can get to be very, very dense. It tolerates very low soil fertility and acidic soils. For that reason, it's used a lot in mine reclamation. It's non-bloating. It has that erect growth habit means that there is low parasite ingestion in goats, and if you know much about small ruminants, one of the biggest problems they have, because they and because there are very few effective wormers or dewormers for goats and sheep, is that when they then have parasites from their manure or from other infected animals, internal parasites, they can actually get onto forage and be reconsumed, and the goat can reinfect itself. The more erect the forage, the harder it is for those parasites to get up into the grazing zone. And also, as another further benefit of Sericea lespedeza, it's considered to have a deworming effect in goats. What you'd change about Sericea lespedeza? Boy, you'd change its high tannin content. And tannin is a chemical that's present in unimproved varieties of Sericea lespedeza that makes it bitter to cattle. There are low tannin varieties available. AU low tan and AU grazer are a couple, and there are others. The tannins decline greatly when it's cut for hay, which is one of the few times when hay is better after it's cut than before. And I'll ask you to think back to an earlier lecture, what other anti-quality component of forage declines in hay? And you may find that in the notes to this slide, but I'll just let you think about that and fill that in on your own time. Sericea lespedeza gets a bad rap because it's very unpalatable when it's over mature. So much so that many producers consider it invasive in their fields and don't like it. And our last legume for the section on these non-alfalfa legumes in Kentucky is going to be birdsfoot trefoil, or Lotus corniculatus. The advantages for birdsfoot trefoil are that it is non-bloating again, like Sericea lespedeza, like the annual Lespedezas, and it's very palatable. It tolerates very low soil fertility and acidic conditions, and like Sericea lespedeza, it looks like a world beater in a mine reclamation site. The disadvantages are it is a very short-lived perennial due to being susceptible to crown rots, and it and reseed then to persist. Now, it's a photoperiodic plant, and that is it needs very long days in order to flower and set seed, and Kentucky is at the lower edge of adaptation for reseeding. Further north, you have longer days in the summer, and then birdsfoot trefoil is a much more prolific reseeder. And one of the things that really hurts it is it has very low seedling vigor compared to the other clovers like red clover or white. So that's been a real quick look at the legumes in Kentucky, the common legumes in Kentucky other than alfalfa. So that'll bring this section of PLS 510 to a close. We'll see you next time.